All right, so this is the first video in what I anticipate to be a pretty long playlist of videos encompassing W3 Schools, starting with HTML, working through CSS and JavaScript. So I wanted to challenge myself and go through all of this, um, and just present it out there for everyone to learn. What's my reason why? I believe that this is so vital and important to anyone that runs a business, anyone that is artistic in today's tech-driven world. I feel like this is essential. Um, Now, there are a lot of easy ways to create a website. There are ways that you can drag and drop, easy drag and drop features. Um, but what I'm tending to notice is that a lot of these sites with drag and drop features, or like everything that's very user friendly that you're purchasing, a lot of those prices are skyrocketing and pricing people out. Even like customers that they have that, have been there for a decade, and had their website hosted for a decade, prices are just skyrocketing. So it was interesting to me, and I talked to my wife and said, like, what if I were to go through HTML, CSS, and JavaScript in W3 Schools and just be able to present this to everyone and know that if someone, like, I consider myself very common in my knowledge, and my expertise when I first started learning computer science, learning any sort of programming languages. Um, and my journey, I started knowing basically nothing. I knew nothing, um, because I just hadn't had anyone to teach me. In high school, I didn't take I took keyboarding, how to type on a computer, and that was it. And I think it's just so valuable when I got to college, being able to learn all these skills that I feel like other people turn to me and think I have superpowers based off of what I'm able to do. Um, so I felt this was really essential to go through this. I think also having someone break these things down for you is really important. Um, I know I was intimidated when I first started because I felt like everyone knew a lot more than me. And I very quickly like started to find that I just was losing motivation because it seemed like everything was moving so fast, or my professor wasn't explaining things in a way or breaking things down properly. At least to me, like maybe he was teaching to the middle of the class and everyone knew what was going on, but me, I was just this guy that didn't know anything, right? So I spent a ton of time outside of the classroom trying to catch up. Um, but it's a lot. And it does take a lot of time. Anyone who like wants to like skip all of this stuff and just get right to the fun stuff, quote unquote fun stuff, um, needs to understand that this takes such a long time to master. It's like playing an instrument, right? You don't just pick up a guitar and be like, hey, I'm gonna learn how to play this guitar solo for the first time. You have to learn the basics. And with that too, you also have to have confidence that um, that you are able to do this. Another big piece is that like you have to do this on a regular basis. It can't be you'll learn it and then 2 years later you come back to it. It has to be consistent. It has to be. Okay. So with that, I'm going to start with HTML. I'm going to continue through. Some of these videos might be really short. Some of them might be a bit longer if I get extended periods of time that I can work on this. But I just think this is essential and really important. So I'm going to get started here. I went to W3 Schools website, and the very first one, it says HTML. And from here, you get this screen that says HTML is the standard markup language for web pages. With HTML, you can create your own website. HTML is easy to learn. You will enjoy it. And, it gives you some examples of like, hey, you're going to be trying things yourself that, um, here's some, it says in this HTML tutorial, you will find more than 200 examples with our online try it yourself editor. You'll have exercises where you have to fill in the blanks. And then there's quizzes. It says track your progress with your free My Learning program. Log into your account and start earning points. Okay. Different resources. And we're going to move right on. Okay. So I'm going to click on next. Okay. If you look also too, like when I click that, that moves down. We'll go through one at a time. It says HTML is the standard markup language for creating websites. Okay. HTML stands for Hypertext Text Markup Language. HTML is the standard markup language for creating web pages. HTML describes the structure of a web page with the website. Like basically the bones of the website, I would compare it. HTML consists of a series of elements. HTML elements tell the browser how to display the content. And HTML elements label pieces of content such as this is a heading, this is a paragraph, this is a link. Okay, so they're different elements, which I always like to see things. I'm very visual, right? So whenever there's a bunch of words, and this is just like briefly saying this is what HTML is. And this is a simple HTML document. Okay. It's you have this exclamation point, doc type HTML surrounded by these tags, right? This is a less than symbol. This is a greater than symbol. An HTML tag. So you might be looking at this for the first time and asking, like, what is this? It hasn't explained it yet. It's just saying, like, here's what something is. You'll see this happen in computer science often, where it will tell you something and then say, all right, look at this. And it shows you something, and you have to realize that like a lot of this you'll be diving in, understand that you'll be diving in deeper later on. This is just like the basics, right? So we give you the what. Just try it for yourself. I click on it, this run button. What the run button does is it runs your code. It runs what you write, and it's running your HTML, and this is your output, right? So this is where you're typing everything. I could click over here, type whatever I wanted, click run, and this is what shows up, right? So I'll close out of this, and it says example explained, right? So this is where, so it shows you it. It explains, it kind of gives you the basics, gives you some example code, and then explains it. It says the doc type with exclamation point out in front, HTML declaration defines that this document is an HTML5 document. Okay. What is HTML5? We haven't talked about that yet, so don't be too confused. The HTML element is the root element of an HTML page. Okay. The head element contains meta information about the HTML page. So this is things about the site. If you look at what is what is meta information, it's just things about the website. In this case, the head included a title, and that would be the page title. So something about the website goes in the head. It says the title element specifies a title for the HTML page. which is shown in the browser's title bar on the Pages tab. Okay, so the title will make a title show up here, like Introduction to HTML. So if I were to click at this again, see if I'm able to expand it. Um, let's see. So let me do that. Result size. We'll here orientation, save code. Yeah, normally what would happen is if you were to run it on a normal website, and the same thing, the title is W3Schools Try It Editor or Introduction to HTML. That's the title, right? So if I were to put something else in there, like on the HTML of this web page right here, it says Introduction to HTML. That's what would be in the title. Okay, the body element defines the document's body. So look how the body started here and then was closed right here. But the body element defines the document's body and is a container for all the visible all the visible content such as headings, paragraphs, images, hyperlinks, tables, lists, etc. And once again, like this is just the beginning of this. And if you're new, don't read this and already be turned off by it. It's just explaining these simple concepts and then later on expanding upon them. So it's just giving you the what right now. It's not showing you too much of the why or how things are used. It's just showing you what to do. And eventually, as you go through this, a lot more will make sense. In the same way that when you learn math, I've taught a lot of math in the past. When you learn math, you might be learning all these bits and pieces of things and not know why they're relevant, how they're relevant. And eventually, later on throughout your math career, you figure out how all of these things come together, right? All these topics and things you learned about. So just know that we're just scratching the surface here. Um, it's just giving you some of the basics and not really explaining them. The best way to work with it is to use it more frequently. The H1 element defines a large heading. The P element defines a paragraph, right? So once again, if you look at this, if I click on it, check it out, H1, my first heading. Maybe I change that instead of my first heading. Maybe I change it to um, HTML with Mr. Danzler. And then maybe I change this to we're learning HTML today. Okay. Notice these are between. Look, I have my P tag and it's closed right there. If I run it, it says HTML Mr. Danzler. I can type whatever I wanted. H1 is a header. We'll get into the details of all this later, but this is just, like I said, you're just learning how to use this, using this as like a copy and paste template. I'll go ahead and close out again. The P defined a paragraph. An HTML element is defined by a start tag, some content, and an end tag, right? So I have tag name, content goes here, and then an end tag. So this was my start tag. This was my end tag. So going back to this example right here, right? This was my start tag. This was my end tag. You might hear me also say this is my open tag and this is my close tag, right? So start and end, open, close, right? Notice that the tags start with a less than and end with a greater than, right? It's almost like it's being contained inside of it. Okay, so some examples, my first heading, paragraph. Notice that there was a forward slash H1 to close it, and a forward slash P to close this one. All right. Um, some other start tags, right? If you have BR, hasn't explained what BR is, but it is a break. It says some HTML elements have no content, like the break element. These are called empty elements. Empty elements do not have an end tag. Okay, so what is that even used for? They probably could have done a better job explaining that. So I'll go back up here again, right? So maybe I add a break. Okay, notice when I did that, right? The BR, it says it has no content. These are called empty elements. So let me show you what a break does. And maybe I'll copy this and paste it and say my second paragraph and run it. Notice how it gave a bigger break. Check this out. If I remove this and run it, it takes away that space. Alarm going off.
Without unsworn.
Okay, so notice that with the break, it adds some extra space. Add a break here. And also notice that like you don't like, I know this is something that sometimes I overlook when I look at this for the first time, and someone's not familiar with this. Any blank space, like if I just hit enter here, that does nothing to the HTML. It does nothing to it. So like don't think I'll write, all right, my first heading, I'll add a bunch of space. That does nothing. It just runs exactly the same. Nothing changes on this side over here. Okay. If you want extra space, you would use this break tag, right? BR. There you go. Okay. So that's the BR element or break. Web browsers. The purpose of a web browser. So I'm using Google Chrome. I prefer Google Chrome. Prefer another one. That's great. But it says the purpose of a web browser, Chrome, Edge, Firefox, Safari, to name a few, is to read HTML documents and display them correctly, right? So Google Chrome right now is reading from W3Schools, and it's reading the HTML document and displaying it correctly. If I were to right click um, this page and then click on View Page Source, I can see their HTML for this page. Notice it starts with doctype HTML. You see the head, the title, and then you see all of this metadata, right? We'll learn about script later. Look at all this, right? This is what's on the page. So that's what the HTML is. And then Chrome, right now I'm using Google Chrome, it reads it and displays it. A browser does not display the HTML tags, but uses them to determine how to display the document. Okay. HTML page structure. Below is a visualization of an HTML page structure. Notice indentation. Indentation is a big thing when it comes to just being able to organize and make it look nice. Okay, so you don't have to indent it, but it makes it look nice, and I prefer indentation. In some programming languages like Python, indentation's built in and necessary. But in this case, as long as you have your open and close tags, notice you open the HTML and you close it at the end. You open the head and you close it there. You open the body, you close it. And then you have your H1 start and end tags, P start and end tag, and P start and end tag. Okay. It says the content inside the body section will be displayed in a browser. So all of this is what's actually going to be displayed. The content inside the title element will be shown in the browser's title bar, right? We mentioned that. So like introduction to HTML, let me inspect this, right? Well, actually, let me not inspect it. Let me look at the page source. I'm going to look for title. Check this out. It wasn't very far. I didn't have to look very far. Um, but the title right here is Introduction to HTML. And that's what makes Introduction to HTML show up at the very top of the tab, right? So this is the actual source code. And look at all this, right? If I drag all of this. So 8,213 lines later, look, you're ending your HTML and it ends your body, right? So you have a lot going on here. That might be overwhelming, but we haven't got to that yet. It says the content inside the body section will be displayed in a browser. The content inside the title element will be shown in the browser's title bar or the Pages tab. Okay, so we've went through that already. HTML history, just in case you want to learn the history of HTML. Fun, fun, fun stuff, right? Obviously not necessary, but just it's good to learn history and see the progression of things over time. Tim Berners-Lee invented www. Tim Berners-Lee invented HTML, right? Then HTML plus and all these different. If you want to sit down and learn what all this stuff is, be my guest. But it's just basically saying, hey, look, um, this was all started back in 1989. Um, since the early days of the World Wide Web, there have been many versions of HTML, and it's gotten a lot better, right? So we're using HTML5, HTML 5.1, 5.2. Um, in this tutorial, we follow the latest HTML5 standard. Okay, and that's the end of that page.
All right, so HTML editors. And it says a simple text editor is all you need to learn HTML. It's nice. You don't need to use anything new, but you can, right? There's different places you can write your code, but it says you can learn HTML using Notepad or TextEdit. There's other places that you can write your HTML, but these are some popular choices. It says web pages can be created and modified by using professional HTML editors. You can go on and find different IDEs and places to write your code. But it says, however, for learning HTML, we recommend a simple text editor like Notepad for PC or TextEdit for Mac. We believe that using a simple text editor is a good way to learn HTML, and I agree. Whenever you can make something simple, or if you can find the way of least resistance in this, especially in the beginning, I'd recommend it. It says follow the steps below to create your first web page with Notepad or TextEdit. Okay, I'm using a Mac right now. So if you're using a PC, do this. I'm going to open up my Finder and go to Applications. And then after that, it says in my applications, I should have text edit, right? So if I'm going to look through here, and there's text edit. So I'm going to click on it, and there's text edit. Shows up. Am I able to pull that up over top? That would be fantastic. Here's text edit down here. So if I'm able to Let me do that. Now it's making me switch between because that's full screen, I see. So I'll go ahead and just minimize that screen. I'll close out some of these things in the background. Probably wondering, what are those things? All right, you got a lot going on here. So let me close out of all these other things. All right. So I'll go ahead and drag text edit over here. And I'll pull these two screens side by side. Like I said, I'm just using a Mac. If you're using a PC, follow these steps. But I went ahead and opened text edit. Okay. So this is text edit on my left. This is what I'm looking through on the right. Says also change some preferences to get the application to save files correctly in preferences format. Choose plain text. So if I click on format up here, I have an option to make plain text. I'm going to click that. Okay. And there we go. So it says, then under open and save, check the box that says display HTML files. So if I click on file, or actually click on here, text edit, and click on preferences, click on open and save, and then display HTML files as HTML code instead of formatted text. Okay. And then if I close out and go back to it, notice that's still checked. So we're good to go. Okay. So we've made our preference changes right there. And it says, then open a new document to place the code. But notice too, let's go to preferences and I'll say format, new document format. We'll make it every single time to plain text. Okay. So I'll make that the default. So that way, if I say file new, I get this default every single time. Okay. If you don't want to make it the default, that's fine. If you want to do it every single time, like the first time I went through, then do it that way. But if you want to make it the default, especially if you're going to be going through learning a lot of HTML, I'd recommend it. Okay. And it says, write some HTML. Write or copy the following HTML code into Notepad. So I'm going to copy it. And I'll copy. And I hit Command C. You can hit Control C if you have a PC, or just click here and say copy, right? I'm going to copy it and paste. It's pretty small. So maybe I can zoom in a little bit. There we go. I like that better. Okay. And then after I copied it, right there it is. I have my doctype HTML, and then HTML open my start type, my end tag, my start of my body, end body, my H1 tag, and then my paragraph P tag. Okay. Then it says save the HTML page. Save the file on your computer. So select file, and then it says save as. I'm sorry, I'm in Chrome. There you go. Make sure you're in text edit. Click file, and then click save. And it says name the file index.htm. Okay. And set the encoding to UTF-8, which we already have. It says it's preferred encoding for HTML files. Don't worry about what UTF-8 is right this second, but it's just going to be there. Notice too, it says you can use either .htm or .html as file extensions. There's no difference, right? So if I want to say index.html, I could. Tells me to write as HTM, so I'll leave it as is there. Okay, and then I'll save it. And I'll say use HTM. All right. Open the saved HTML file in your favorite browser. It says double click on the file or right click and choose it with open with. So if I go to what I just recently saved, my index, right? Double click on it and it shows up in Google Chrome. Pretty cool, right? So that's what I've done. It says W3Schools online editor, try it yourself. Sign in with our free online editor. And I'll go ahead and close out of this and maximize this again. It says with our free online editor, you can edit HTML code and view the result in your browser right here. You don't need to put it in Notepad. But it says it's your perfect tool when you want to test code fast. It also has color editing and the ability to save. So this is just another place that you can write your HTML. So this whole section is about editors. We're able to edit in for PC, for Notepad, for Mac, we're able to edit it in text edit. And this is another option here, right? W3Schools online editor. We'll probably be using this most of the time here just because it's right there. So like it's the easiest clicking, try it yourself. And we'd already used this in a previous example, but there it is, right? Same exact thing. Okay. Um, it says, if you want to create your own website, W3School Spaces. If you want to create your own website, I want to create my own website throughout this. I'm going to be making an example website throughout the learning process just to utilize these things that we're learning and just be able to add some real application to it, make it very practical. So it says, if you want to create your own website and save your code online, try our free website builder called W3Schools Spaces. So it says W3School Space has everything you need right in the browser. Get started now. Join W3Schools and create a space. Choose a template or start from scratch. Edit code directly in your browser and share your web page with the world. Pretty cool. Let's just take a peek at it, right? Getting started for free. Powerful code editor. Okay. Making everything look nice. Okay. So it's just showing there's a bunch of tools you can use. Something that I definitely like to explore a little later on. I think since we're just getting started here, um, it's good to stay the path that's providing, but it's good to intro it now, saying, "Hey, look, eventually, like, it might make sense to take whatever you're creating and use this." So we'll definitely come back to that at some point. All right, and moving on, HTML basic examples. In this chapter, so each of these are chapters: home chapter, introduction, editors. Now we're in basic examples. In this chapter, we will show some basic HTML examples. Don't worry if we use tags you have not learned about yet. I agree. Like some of these things that we go through, like the first time through, it might not make perfect sense, but I do think it's important to introduce topics early on and then eventually go back to them and say, hey, remember that thing we talked about in this one chapter? Well, now we're going to expand on it. Okay. So if we use tags you haven't learned about yet, that's fine. Use them, know what they do, and then maybe we'll learn the why and the how later. Okay, so expanding or just reiterating what we did before, it says all HTML documents must start with a document type declaration, right? So this is what we start with. Okay, the doc type HTML exclamation point out in front, doc type in all caps there, HTML. So, just this is docs, so the document type, it's an HTML document. That exclamation point, like just to get the computer's attention. Okay. The HTML document, the HTML document itself begins with HTML and ends with the forward slash HTML. Okay. The visible part of the HTML document is between the body, the open start tag, and the end start tag. Okay. So that's the body. Okay. The meat of everything. Okay. That's where you find the body. So if I were to click on it, this is something we've already done before, but that's what you get. Maybe I'll change it and say we'll play around with it. So instead of my first heading, I'll type. hmm, I guess one thing I want to introduce here. Um, let's say we want to have a couple different examples of what I might want to do in like terms of like an example project that just kind of helps lead me through all this. Have like a database idea, creating an online database of different players. Um, also have um, different games that I think would be a good idea to start with. But let's just say we're making like we're just you want to make a website about. I'll just make it about our soccer team, right? The Baltimore Kings. So I'll say Baltimore Kings. I'll make it Pro Soccer Alliance. How about that? So that'll encompass everything. Pro Soccer Alliance. I have there's the Baltimore Royals, the Salisbury Stakes, Baltimore Kings, Washington Fire. They're all part of Pro Soccer Alliance, which plays indoor soccer and futsal. So 6v6 soccer, and then with walls, and then futsal is 5v5 on a court, no walls. And maybe I'll say welcome to the official website of Pro Soccer Alliance. Right? As long as we keep it inside the P. So if I run it, it says Pro Soccer Alliance, Pro SA. Welcome to the official website of Pro Soccer Alliance. There you go. What was it? What if that was my website? What if that was my Pro Soccer Alliance website? Pretty cool website. Okay. So then it defines what each thing was. So I'll leave that open this time. It says the doc type declaration, some things about it. The doc type declaration represents the document type. Remember how like when we first started this, we just saw doc type and it was there at the top a few chapters ago. We're like, what is that? So one of the things that you can get caught up in is when something's introduced, you can get overwhelmed by it. And at the very beginning, we introduced like a few chapters ago, we introduced what a, example HTML file looks like. And you just saw these like tags. It didn't give much of an explanation. Some curriculum is really good at like introducing something, saying, hey, here's this thing, let's play with it, and then we'll go deeper in it later. Um, but some just like assumes that you know things. I don't like to assume that anyone knows anything. I like things as simple as possible, starting from the beginning. Even when I read a book, like I don't like to skip through things because I feel like I'll miss something. I'm like watching a movie. If I miss like the first few minutes, I feel like completely lost the entire movie. Even if it wasn't really even important, I think like, what did I miss? What was important there? Um, and the same with like books too. Like if I'm reading a book, if there's a section in the beginning of the book that even is just like a prologue or a forward in the beginning of the book, I think reading that to me just seems important, even if it's not ultimately. Like I like to just to know that I read something from cover to cover. So with that, when you're introduced to these things, you might not like understand why, but I promise we'll go back to them. It even says it here, the doc type declaration, right? The exclamation point doc type. We're going back to this. So it says the doc type declaration represents the document type and helps browsers to display web pages correctly. Remember, we're using Google Chrome as our browser right now. And the document type we're looking at is an HTML document. Okay. Um, a website is made up of web pages, and we're working on a web page right here, right? This is one page. It must only appear once at the top of the page before any HTML tags. So you can't have it multiple times. Must only appear once. The doc type declaration is not case sensitive, right? So you could write it like this and run. Maybe I'll change something here to show you the difference, right? There you go. And run it. See, it worked with lowercase doc type. If I write it all caps, as is the preferred way, the standard way of doing it. I would write it all caps, but it's not case sensitive. And make sure it's before any HTML tags, that you don't have HTML before and then write doc type later. It needs to be at the top there. And then doc type, why are we writing this? It's declaration for HTML5 files, right? Now, HTML headings. So you have HTML headings are defined with the H1 to H6 tags. H1 defines the most important heading. H6 defines the least important heading. So check this out. If I run it, I have my doc type HTML tags, right? My body, and inside my body, I have H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6, right? So check it out. H1, look how big that is. H2, H3, 4, 5, 6 is so small, right? So if I were to use that in this example over here, right? We had Pro Soccer Alliance. Maybe I can put, maybe I'll write H2. Um, maybe I just copy all this, right? And then I'll close it. And then maybe I'll just like write something random in there. Okay. If I run it, welcome to the official website of Pro Soccer Alliance. And then there's my paragraph. But I could use like, if I was like, maybe that's too big, right? Maybe it's too close to that. Maybe I want to use H3. Let's look what H3 looks like. Decent size. Let's say if we want to go even smaller down to H4. There you go. H6 is the smallest. I think that's too small, but see what that looks like. Yeah, that's way too small. What if you like typed in H7, right? What would H7 do? Let's try it. It's just like, oh, like, this is just going to be the paragraph. What if I wrote H8? What would H8 give you? Right? Um, what if I wrote H88? So it looks like anything greater than I think it was H7 that we wrote. It just makes it a paragraph. Let's try H3 here. Let's run it. And now let's try like H99. What does H99 do? Run it. It just sets the paragraph. So I didn't know that. Right. So if we have anything above H6, it literally just makes it a paragraph. Interesting. I think H4 looked nice. Let's try that. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. And maybe I'll just say like home of the Baltimore Kings. I'm just going to put them in order that we founded them. First was Baltimore Kings. Then we had Washington Fires. Then we had the Salisbury Steaks. And now we have the Baltimore Royals, our women's team. Maybe I'll add a period there. And if I wanted to go on and on and on and on, um, maybe I could. I'll just leave it there for now. I'll leave it like that. Let's go back to learn some things. Okay, so those are my H1 to H6 tags. We played around with them. I probably did more than I needed to, but oh well. Okay, I'll go ahead and close out of this right here. I'll leave the other one open. It says HTML paragraphs are defined with P. So P for paragraph. Okay, this is a paragraph. Open, start, end, open, close. Try it yourself. We already did that, but if you want to add another paragraph, um, say pro, I'll just abbreviate it and say Pro SA was founded in 2015. um, November of 2015. If I run it, there's my second paragraph. So you can have multiple paragraphs. You can have multiple H1s even. Look, check this out. So maybe I'll copy this and I'll say to the Pro Soccer Alliance, I'll just write something random in there just to show you can have multiple H1s. It's not saying, hey, this is my only H1 or my only paragraph. You can have as many as you like. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that though. Okay, HTML links. Everyone loves to link things, hyperlinks. Okay, it says HTML links are defined with the A tag. And then check this out. It has A href. Okay, and then where it's going, and then what the actual text is that shows up. Then we close it. So it says try it yourself. We click on it. Check this out. So HTML links is in H2. I'll zoom in here. The paragraph says HTML links are defined with a tag. Right, there we go. And then we use this href. Right, what is href? you might be thinking. So the reference point, right, of the hyperlink. So this is where it would take you, and it says this is a link. If I change that to say, click me. There you go. But what happens when I click it? If I click it, it takes me to W3Schools. Pretty cool. Takes me to the website. So I go back, right? It says the link's destination is specified in the href attribute. So if I go through and look at this example, it says a href, and then notice that there is a close tag here, right? Open, close. So this is like, with like H1 or P, you had P and then a close, a start and then an end, open, a close. So here you have your open, but it's just a bit longer. And then what actually shows up, what you're going to click, it says this is what you're going to click. This is a link. And then the close to it. So let's copy this, right? And let's go ahead and paste it in here. So maybe I can say I'll just paste it right here and ahref, and I'll say www dot, we'll say masl3.com, and we'll say masl3 website. This is one of the leagues we play in, right? And maybe we then copy this and we'll say futsal superliga.com, and I'll say futsal superliga website. And so if I run it, I can click on MASL3 website, and it takes me to the MASL3 website, right? If I run it again and it says Futsal Superliga website, it's not taking me to the Futsal Superliga website. Oh, there it is. It was slow. Okay. So the Futsal Superliga website. Right. So that's how I would, maybe instead of writing website to make it look nicer, I'll take out the words website. Okay. Notice that it put them right next to each other, right? It didn't actually break and put it in the next line. All right. So it says the link's destination is specified in the href attribute. Attributes are used to provide additional information about the HTML elements, and you will learn more about attributes in a later chapter. So they've introduced something and said, hey, let's at least get the basics down. Let's show you how to start all this. But from here, we're going to move on and maybe in a future chapter come back to it. Well, it says they will come back to it. Okay, images, HTML images. It says HTML images are defined with the img tag. The source file, src, alternative text alt, width, and height are provided as attributes. Okay, so check this out. The attribute that we had before was href for my a tag. In this case, the img tag has different attributes. So the source is very important. That's where it comes from. The alternative text the width and the height. Let's click on this. Okay. So we've used W3Schools 104 by 142. Let's play with this. Let's see if we make the width 150. Well, that's pretty wide. Um, what if I make it by 150 by 150? Look at that. If I make it a little bigger, let's say 200. Okay. So that's how we would change the width and height of the image. The image that's actually in question here is over there. Now, where does this image come from? Let's look at that. So it says how to view HTML. Well, I guess they've moved on without actually showing you how to upload this picture. Maybe it's going to go back to that later. Let's go to this. So you have to have what it doesn't tell you here, which I'm guessing it will come back to this later. But you can't just type in any random picture and show up. It has to also be attached um, as like in your folder here. You have to attach this image. And I think they'll come back to that later because it doesn't specify it right now. So we'll worry about that. We'll deal more with images later on. Looks like, yeah, HTML images are down here. So we'll come back to that. Okay. Um, how to view HTML source says, have you ever seen a web page and wondered, hey, how did they do that? View the HTML source code. We've already done this, but if I click here and it says view page source, it'll take me there. Right. You can spend some time looking through this, right? Look, you have href, right? You have different links. But the other way they said, let me just get out of this view source. It says click Control plus U in the HTML page, or right click on the page and say view page source. We did that. But if I hit Control U, let's try. Um, didn't work for me. Control U, Command U, doesn't matter. Right click and view page source. I'm not sure why that's not showing up the other way, but this was the way that worked for me. Does the same thing. Inspect an HTML element. Right click on an element or blank area and choose inspect. So I guess it wants me to do that. So I'll pull this up, right click and click on inspect. So then this pops up. Right, like what in the world is all this stuff? Well, let's look. It says inspect to see what elements are made up of. You will see both the HTML and the CSS. You can also edit the HTML or CSS on the fly in the Elements or Styles panel that opens. Okay, so you see this styles over here. So if I click on a specific element, I don't know, let's see. I can't read what a lot of that is. But if I click, it will show me all this going on. Let me scroll down, see what else is down here. Getting kind of the same thing for each. Anyway, so autocomplete off, clicking here. All these are changing on the right. So they're just introducing how to actually see this stuff. I'm going to close out of it. Nothing that is life-changing right now. Some of this can get confusing. You don't want to, right now, they're in the stage right now of just throwing a lot of stuff at you, trying to get you to digest it, and then letting you know, hey, we're going to learn a little bit more about this later. But if you want to play with it, it's always good to take your time, mess around with this stuff. Okay. Like I mentioned before, if you have a time crunch and you're like, hey, I have to learn this by, that's a quick way to take shortcuts that could create a huge gap in learning. I don't like speeding through things. I like taking my time, and not everyone has a ton of time. And that's the problem. That's what sets a ton of people back. And one of the biggest reasons why people won't learn this stuff. It takes time. You have to practice it, right? Some people are faster than others. I am a turtle when it comes to anything new, but I take my time going through it. Once I learn it, I get really good at it. Okay. So if I know how to do something, I'll take my time learning it. I'll ask a lot of questions. I encourage you to ask questions as well. Okay. HTML elements are surrounded by a specific type of brackets. Which one? You have the open and close. So this is a less than symbol. This is a greater than symbol. And the same over here. Less than, greater than. And let's see if I'm right. Submit the answer. Correct. Sweet. We did it. Does it want us to continue to go? Yeah. Here we go. Another one. Fill in, it's a typo. Fill in the missing code to complete the markup. Okay. So wants me to the open and then A, right? And then we want to close it like that. I believe that's right. So less than A, my A tag, and then close the A. Let's see if we're right. Correct. Okay, so completed it. Good stuff. And that is the end of the HTML basic examples.